Mom left the house when she was young to go live with one of our aunts, but I never found out the full story. Even when I was a kid, I remember Grandma showing me around her house and warning me about the marionettes that she kept in the attic. She told me that the leader of them was one named Oscar, and that he wanted everything in its place, always. Even then, I remember tidying up my room as often as I could in fears that Oscar would come by and grab me by my feet when I was sleeping. She had a large collection of marionettes all hanging on the walls and some on the ceiling of her attic. I had to go in there sometimes to get blankets or to find movies to watch in her VCR. She had clowns and horses, women in bright dresses, and sad little girls all hanging with strings onto wooden sticks on hooks, all of them grinning with their wide eyes. Grandma would take them out of the hooks, put them all in a cardboard box, and begin wiping their grins with wax and a cloth by the porch. I didn't like my summers with her. She lived in the loneliest of places all by herself, and every part of the house creaked with anger when I walked from one place to the next. My cousins would be forced to stay there with me sometimes, which made the place a little more bearable. But not the last summer I was there. That last summer I spent at that house was when I discovered that something was wrong with Grandma. I was about to turn 8, and I had to pee in the middle of the night. Grandma had set a nightlight in the shape of a heart on the bottom corner of the room, because she knew how afraid I was of the place. She even offered to wait for me outside the bathroom if I needed to go at night. But Mom warned me not to wake her up at night. She told me with that strict mom face and made me repeat it back to her. I will not wake up Grandma. Instead of ceiling lights, my grandma kept lamps. She kept them everywhere, even in the bathroom and kitchen. But the one in my room was in the corner by the dark closet, and there was no way I was going to risk going there. The hallway was dark. There were no windows nearby, and the closest light source was a tiny red heart by the floor of my room. The smell of dust and old carpets was more intense there. The bathroom was across the hall and one door over. I couldn't wait any longer and opened the door. I put my hands in front of me as I stepped into the darkness, waiting to feel the wallpaper on my right palm as I leaned forward and stretched it as far as I could. One step in with my right leg and nothing. So I scooted the same leg forward one more time. I could see a small beam of light, probably from the light in my room. It played with my mind as it changed colors from red to blue. I took one more step, but my hand only felt the cold air. As I took the third step, something tapped my hip. It was the door frame to my grandma's room. She had left her room open. I took a step back and the floorboard moaned loudly. My heart stopped at the thought of waking up Grandma and getting in trouble. I reached my hand to feel the wall and I slid my socks on the edges of the wooden floor in that space between the carpet and the wall as I inched closer and closer to the bathroom. From behind me, I could hear tiny thuds, heavier than a drop of water, but lighter than a dog's steps, coming closer and closer behind me. I rushed a little bit as the steps got near me, until I felt the door frame. One more step and I pushed the door to the bathroom open and reached for the little chain on the lamp by the entrance. I ran inside and shut the door. After I finished using the bathroom, I pushed my ear against the door, but I leaned too hard and the loose door tapped against the frame. But I know I heard tiny steps running away down the hall toward the living room. I sat in the bathroom floor with the lamp on for a long time until I heard a knock on the door. It was Grandma calling my name, asking if I was okay. I opened the door to her outstretched hand, reaching for mine. She was leading me back to my room. When I could see the little red light from my room, I told her what I heard in the hallway. That's when her tone changed. Grandma turned to someone else. She had never talked to me that way and almost yelled as she told me that this house belongs to them, and that I was a guest there, and that I should not question the choice of the host. The choice of the host was a phrase that stuck with me when I had to explain what happened to my mom when she came to pick me up. Grandma called her that next morning and then asked me to get my stuff ready. I remember she was upset at me, but I couldn't understand why. I could hear Grandma mentioning names, but I looked up from my bowl of cereal when she mentioned Oscar. And then she turned her dark eyes toward me in anger. Mom ended picking me up that night, and I could sense her discomfort in that house, as I always did. Grandma had not made dinner that evening, and Mom had probably assumed that already, because we stopped at a diner along the highway on the way back. I used to see it on the way to Grandma's every time we drove out there. We were almost finished eating, and then Mom went to the bathroom while I finished up my French fries. When suddenly a different waitress walked to my table and asked me if Mom drove the red car outside. I innocently said yes, and then she asked me if I had gone to the house on the 130th mile marker. Mom and I played a game to count up to 130 in that stretch of highway because they have little posts with numbers, but I didn't know they were called mile markers. So I answered with yes, even though I wasn't sure, and her face grew concerned. To the crazy woman with the marionettes, but I couldn't tell if she was asking a question. She looked ahead and pretended to be picking up our napkins as she saw my mom coming back to the table. Then she rushed to ask me, "Did you see them? Do they really come alive?" There's a hiking trail by my house that I rarely use. Well, it isn't exactly a hiking trail, it's more of a little loop with a dirt walkway that is also paved in some sections. I usually see old couples walking about in the mornings, but there's a nice shaded area that I've been to with my friends and that we used to visit often back in high school. By that tree area, there was an abandoned brick house with a missing roof and a small outhouse on the corner of the property. This place had a chain link fence around it, but nobody cared. People used to go there to supposedly explore, and it was a common thing to see kids with flashlights around there. I was always creeped out by the place, especially because I lived around there, and even more so because I knew about the doll people. You see, I got into a running phase back in the day, and I would wake up at 5 in the morning to circle around the trail and pass by the abandoned brick house every time. One time, I saw an older man come by and kneel as he picked up an old plastic doll from the east wall of the house. He hugged it and walked behind the property without noticing that I was passing by. I thought it was weird, but I kept running and forgot about it until I saw another person. This time a woman, walking toward me from the direction of the abandoned house as tangled dark hair drooped over her forearm. I said good morning to her and she shot me an awkward smile and she looked down and hurried on straight ahead. A few days passed by without seeing anybody until I saw another woman carrying a doll under her arm as I passed by her on the trail. I told one of my friends about it, and he had the dumb idea to go visit the place at night and record it. I was freaked out by the idea, but I agreed to go with him anyway, as long as we invited more people. We did invite people, but they said they would come and meet me at my house and just never showed up, except for Steven. So we just walked the 20 minutes over to the place just after the sun had set, and there was still some light out. As we approached the patch of trees, Steven got the camera out and I flicked on my flashlight. The idea was just to make a tour video of the place and pretend to be scared. Saying it out loud just made me realize how lame it sounds. But anyway, as we walked through the main doorway with no door, we heard noises coming from the back of the house. At first, I thought it might have been homeless people living there, but the sound was that of a group of high-pitched giggles. I wanted to turn around while we were still by the entrance, but Stephen was already far enough away in front of me that I instead rushed toward him. He went straight to what seemed like the empty back room, with a window to the backyard. "Weird," Stephen whispered. He stepped onto the windowsill, planning on jumping over it and into the backyard. I had seen the place enough times to know that there was another way out, and went back to the entrance to the back room and found a passage to the corner of the house. I don't remember much after that, except for screaming my lungs out at the sight of a small crowd of tiny heads with dark hair around the yard. Some dolls were sitting, and some were laying down. I heard Stephen scream out my name behind me as I ran to the house. I slowed down to let him catch up, but I didn't stop walking fast. He was out of breath, but tried to keep running as he asked me if I had seen that. Of course I did. Why did he think I was running away? I told him about the dolls. "No," he said. "The tombstones. We were speed walking by the time he took out his camera to show me what he got on video. And I could see the dolls clearly now. And yes, they were around dark cement boxes, but they didn't look like tombstones to me. Stephen noticed the dolls for the first time, it seemed like. When we got to my house, we played the video. I could see my flashlight on the right side of the screen as Stephen got close to the tombstone and kicked off some of the leaves away from the writing that was carved on it. I could hear my screaming in the distance before my flashlight disappeared into the darkness, and then Stephen running after me, and he even raised the volume just to hear me scream. Then he didn't find it funny anymore. We both stared at each other as we heard the distinct sound of giggles, just as my scream stopped. Giggles right behind him. Giggles as he ran after me. Giggles until he stopped the recording.